Welcome here, everybody. Episode number 2, Embrace the Storm podcast. Super fired up that you are here. I'm Brenden, Valks, the gentleman with cerebral palsy. To my left, your right, is my co-host Jeremy Wiens, and we're super fired up that you're here, that we're here, and we're back again. I don't know, can you say that after a second episode?
Well,
back again? I guess technically.
We are back again, so that's what counts, right? We're going to keep going.
Yeah. So we found a new home. Obviously, you can't tell because the background is awesome anyway. But we're actually in Jeremy's basement. Super pumped about that, actually. Because I was worried about being cold.
We were in the garage before, but now basement a lot warmer. Good thing is, kick the boys out, so we have more space and we're good to go.
Yeah, it's fun when you're the parent.
Yeah, take advantage of it.
So how are you, man? How was your week?
You know what? My week was good. I had one day where I crashed hard. Like when I say I crashed hard, Tuesday night I went to bed at like 9:30, and I woke up at 9:15 in the morning. I didn't wake up to go to the gym. I didn't notice my alarm. I didn't notice that.
You smoked?
I did, Brenden tried to get me up to go to get the kids ready. Didn't notice that. And also I woke up and I was like, what time is it? I knew I slept in. I just, between real estate and council, I've been burning the candle a little bit at both ends, and a couple of 12, 14-hour days back to back, and I just caught up with me. So I looked at it, rescheduled my whole day, took the day off, and back in Thursday, 5:45 in the tub, going again.
How has the cold plunge been now that it's cold outside?
Better. The cold plunge is now in the garage.
Oh.
So it's
okay. So it's warmer.
Well, it's
surroundings, anyways.
It's easier to deal with, that's for sure. Because every time I see anybody doing it, they're doing it in like plus 30, and they're in a cold environment, and you're like, well, my water's still cold, so don't get that wrong. It's still at that right temperature, but it's in the garage. You don't have to worry about the elements. So
that is nice. I've just seen guys in our climate do it in the wintertime, and they got to chip the ice off the top and all that good stuff. So.
Not interested. I don't have an expensive one. I just got a cheap one off Amazon.
Yeah.
So it would break if I had to chip the ice off. So.
I love that. Yeah, it's been a long week.
Yeah, yours?
Mine has been long. Work has been a lot, but man, I've been looking forward to this.
Absolutely.
Get to hang out with you.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like a bi-weekly reason to hang out.
I'll take it.
Yeah, because we're both busy. We both have families. We both got careers and things going on, and we don't always make the time for each other. Like before doing the podcast, I think we'd go months.
Yeah.
Sometimes without hanging out.
Yeah.
For an evening, and now with this, we've committed to doing it, and so now we're kind of forced to get together.
Yeah.
And have these conversations, and that's the funny thing. We were talking last week and even just before. We're having these conversations anyways, so why not turn the camera on and turn the mic on and have these conversations as a podcast and possibly help somebody out along the way.
Well, you know what? That's just it. If we could bring somebody along into this, and I was somebody came up to me this week and they're like, hey, we want to start a thing with people who want to start businesses, with people who want to do this, and like, would you be willing to jump on board and help kind of direct that? And I was like, well, let's sit down and talk. Right. But it's just that thing where people are, there's an aspect of people are wanting to know about business. They want to know about life and how to start. And the cool thing about this is a guy who's retired, who wants to start teaching young guys.
He got bored.
He's like, you know what? I know systems. I know business. I know this. I know, like, I used to do all these things and running companies, and now I want to actually do that.
Yeah.
Help other people start out. I'm like, sweet, how do we do this, right?
That is awesome.
So we're in talks about that. And believe me, I thought about you right away. But let's talk a little bit about why we're here tonight, because we actually have a very important purpose.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to be super vulnerable this evening with everybody. I mean, I say this evening, you might be listening to this tomorrow or a different day. But, Jeremy and I were talking about what are we going to talk about this week? And we had something completely different planned. And last minute, I switched it on Jer. He was gracious enough to allow me to do that. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through what is your why exercise. I think it's from Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
That this comes from his fantastic book. So what Jeremy did is he sent me some information about what is your why, or how to kind of get started in the exercise, and we're going to walk through it live, basically, on this podcast. But the reason I wanted to switch this up from our original topic was last week we were talking about what's one thing that you can start for the end of the year so that you get going, get momentum in life. And I got to thinking, one of the things that has really bugged me is what happens when you feel stuck.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it. When you feel stuck, you don't know how to get unstuck. And it becomes this perpetuating circle of, I'm stuck, I'm not going to do anything. I'm stuck, I'm not going to. And then days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. And before you know it, it's the end of the year.
Yeah, and I've done this. What is your why? And it's for me. This was something that it made a lot of sense. It was eye opening. But to take the understanding of what is your why, and then take it to the next step, which is how do I incorporate that and what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was if what I'm going to be doing does that go with what my why is, or does that contradict it? If it contradicts it, it's garbage, right? It doesn't matter.
Right.
I don't waste my time with it. And there's some good opportunities, but it doesn't go with what my why is, right? Versus, oh, that gelled. Like you talked, this guy coming in with the entrepreneurs and having that kind of vision.
Does it actually fit in?
Does that fit with me? Well, on the surface it does. So as we dive deeper in, we'll find out, right? But
so
it answers those questions really quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Is when you get stuck, you don't have a North Star. You don't have somewhere to go. And when you're stuck, that why is muddy.
Yeah.
Right? Like lots of guys get stuck in that realm of, well, I just get up and I go to work because I got to take care of my family, which is a noble and great thing.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. Like that's super important. That's one of the reasons I get up in the morning to go to work is because I have a family to take care of and I love them very much. But men need more. We need a North Star of some kind. And so tonight I want to take you guys through this exercise. I'm going to be the guinea pig. I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable, and maybe it'll help you guys springboard your own why exercise. Even if you do a different version of this, or you at least think through some of these questions. Maybe they're things you've never even really thought of. Like, I'm going to sort of spoil the beans here a little bit, but one of the questions in here is, what's one happy memory from childhood? Well, as grown men with families and things going on, when's the last time we thought about that? If ever.
Right.
If ever. Right? Like I was prepping for this, and that was one of those questions that I sat there and I had to scratch my head a little bit. And it's not that I didn't have a happy childhood or anything.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's what I found interesting about this whole thing is the questions aren't complicated, but they are absolutely complex to get into, right? Like there's simple questions, but they are so hard. And there's a lot of meaning when you actually sit there and you get beyond the surface answer, right? And that's what we're getting into tonight. And we're going to dive right into that right away. So I think we start off with, and if you guys are interested in getting this, let us know. We'll absolutely send this to you.
Heck yeah. We'll send you over the template that Jer sent me to prep for this and use this video, albeit kind of all over the place maybe. But use this video, use this podcast as a guide to go through it, and grab yourself a friend or partner to go through this with. I recommend another man, maybe not your wife or significant other.
It's supposed to be somebody that knows you, but doesn't know you too well. And so, like, I know Brenden, like, well, but I don't know his past. I don't know his history of where he's from.
Thank you for articulating that. Yeah.
Right? So I know who he is now,
Yeah.
But I don't know how he necessarily became who he is today. So that's what this is going to allow me.
Hopefully we stay friends after.
Well, hey, you know what? I'm going to ask you questions. I hope so. So, so we'll go into that. So, I mean, without further ado, why don't we dive right in? So
Jared, as the facilitator here, where do you want me to start?
You know what? Let's go right from the beginning. I think, right? Like,
okay.
Let's just dive right in. You've got some stuff pre-planned, which you're supposed to do. Like when you look at this, you're supposed to have some questions. You're supposed to have some ideas of where you're going.
So let's actually just quickly walk them through this here.
Sure. Yeah.
So the Find Your Why exercise, the first one here is what they say is to gather some stories, 3 to 5 stories, and I use the prompts in this document here. Again, we can send this to you super interested, there are some prompts on things that you're supposed to do. And the first one here is to bring to mind 5 stories that were most impactful in your life. They should have specific time, place, moments, something like that, to really get those emotions flowing. I maybe didn't do a very good job of that, by the way, but we can talk
we'll
about
get
that.
there.
But the first one I started with was, as a prompt, was who in your life helped make you the person you are. Maybe a coach, a mentor, a teacher, a family member, something like that. So that's where we're going to start here, because that's where I started. And I mean, if we have to dive into, Jared, other things that I didn't write down, don't hesitate to take me there. So yeah, let's just dive into this here. So who early on in my life shaped me and my thinking? So the first person that came to mind, and you guys see me staring off into space here on camera, it's because I'm reading this so I don't screw anything up.
And before he goes, I'm going to be taking notes, right? Because that's my job as in this is to take a few notes to try to catch themes, to try to catch ideas, right? And then that helps develop the whole why in the end.
Right.
So as he talks, I might scribble something down.
The magic happens by you taking notes.
Or questions, and I'm not a note taker, so enjoy.
Okay. So who early on shaped me in my thinking? And interrupt me if you have questions, I guess. So the first person that came to my mind was my dad. Watching his work ethic from a young age with 2 or 3 jobs all at the same time, taking care of his family, that was something that really shaped my work ethic and my thoughts around work. You do it no matter what. You take care of your responsibilities no matter what. You know, sickness, not feeling it, whatever it is, you do it anyway. The next person is my mom. Same thing early in my life. Whatever it took, working hard to take care of me early on, that was huge. I know she probably did a lot of things that she didn't really like or want to do, but she did it to take care of me, and so I appreciate that. The next person is my grandfather, the love he had for his family and the Lord. And then him and my grandma, their love of books and studying. I think my mom was a huge reader as well, but my grandparents, I used to stay in their house on a cot in my grandpa's study, and he had this big wall of books. It was a huge case of books. I mean, looking back, it probably wasn't as big as I thought as a kid, but it was an entire wall of books. And so between them and my mom, I got my love of reading and studying from them. So those were kind of from a family perspective. And then I wrote down an English teacher, but I actually had a couple of English teachers. Funny enough, they were both English teachers who really believed in me, encouraged me to write, because I loved writing when I was younger. I still enjoy writing. I just don't do as much as I'd like to. But yeah, those are some of the people that came to mind through that question. In terms of specific things that really get you into the emotion of things, one of the questions deep down was, or further down was, what was my earliest childhood memory that was happy, right? And one of them lends itself to my dad, who I remember the only time we could get with my dad was in an A&W's parking lot in a truck he was working out of, because we met him in between shifts. My mom and we had dinner with him, just A&W burgers, probably teen burgers, sitting in the vehicle, because my dad had whatever 15, 25 minutes, 30 minutes break to grab a bite to eat. So that was one of my childhood memories, just because we got to spend time with my dad, even though he was working 2, 3 jobs to take care of things. So that was that question.
So what about it? Yeah, well, like, go into a little bit more. Like you talked about hard work. You talked about, like, that's the themes were responsibility, hard work, family, right? Those are kind of the big themes right off the bat, right? So what about the hard work? Like, because then now you talk about also this moment with your dad. Where he's in between work or right, he's just taking that pause. So what about that really hit to you? Like,
just the fact that, like, and I think we're all guilty of this as guys. It's like, you know, we'll see you after work. My dad didn't have that option, because after work was more work or sleeping, as the case might be. And so he made the conscious decision, hey, I'm going to spend time with my family. The only time I have is this 30 minutes, we'll call it. And it's my lunch break or whatever, right? Dinner break. And so he had my mom and I meet him on his break. All he probably wanted to do was sack out for 20 minutes. in between. And so the importance he put on moments like that, I have a few of them growing up, but stuff like that was super important to us.
Yeah.
Talking about being vulnerable, I'm getting a little choked up just thinking about those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, just those moments.
So did you, kind of guess going into this, did you have a close relationship with your dad then?
It's hard to say. And hopefully, maybe one day he listens to this, maybe he doesn't. If you know my dad, don't send this to him. But not really. And it wasn't because we didn't love each other or don't love each other. It's because he worked a lot.
Right.
And then you were in school full time eventually, right, as a kid. And then you get home for dinner. And then, too, when I was growing up, I had 3 younger brothers. They were all in hockey. I don't know if any of your kids have been in hockey, but hockey families, it's like 5 nights a week. And so because I was the only one that wasn't, my parents were in 3 different directions between the 2 of them 5 nights a week,
right,
4 nights a week, whatever it was. I just remember our schedule being crazy. And so there was always something. So there wasn't a lot of family time, but I remember my dad as a kid always making the time. Right? Like he only had 30 minutes, but he made it count.
Right.
Right? Or like my dad always put his time into lessons. So like, hey, we're gonna hang out, but I'm gonna teach you how to change tires.
Right.
Or we're gonna hang out. I got a wrench on the tractor, so come hang out and watch that. Or like there was always a lesson,
right,
of some kind attached to us spending time together.
Okay, and so then we'll move a little bit on. You talked about your grandfather, and like your mom too. Like I guess similar in that aspect because you touched on being busy and going everywhere. But like, did you have a different relationship with your mom than with your dad?
Well, so my mom, it's a complicated family situation. I don't necessarily want to get on a podcast. And my fault for maybe putting it in here. So, but early on in my life, it was just my mom and I. And my grandparents helped us out by letting us stay there. So my mom was a single mom for just a brief moment before she met my dad. And so there was, like, my mom worked her butt off to take care of us and, like, take care of me, I should say. And so I just know that she worked super hard, even though, she probably didn't want to sometimes.
Yeah.
I admire that greatly, and I love her for that.
Okay, so I didn't even know that. Like that's No, so there you go. Grandparents then, like, because this shifts a little bit from work to study, right?
Yeah.
And knowing you, that's
so
ties in. Yeah.
I do love studying. I don't really have hobbies. I don't do football or weekend sports or anything. I like to study and get better at business and life, mental game, things like that. And so growing up, both my grandparents, but my grandpa specifically, he always had his Bible on his desk. He probably still does. Bible on his desk, and then some sort of book. Always Christian study, right? That was primarily what he studied. And he always had his Bible and a different book he was studying on his desk. And like, kind of the table we're sitting at now, it's what do you think? Like 2.5, 3 feet?
40 inches.
40 inches?
Yeah.
You measured.
I built it.
Oh, okay. 40 inches is
not just for this, but yeah.
It's probably about the same size.
Right.
And so he always had his Bible open and then a book open and was always writing notes in cursive because that's what you did. What do y'all know about cursive writing now? But yeah, so I just remember I grew up with him always studying something. My grandma always had a book by her chair that she was reading. It was not always study, but she was always reading something. And so those are some of my earliest memories of just always reading something, and I think that's where I caught my love of reading. Also watching my mom read, a book a week, kind of thing. So she always read romance novels, but don't tell her I said that.
Okay, and then so this one I found interesting is English teacher. So that seems very random. On this list is family and then English teacher.
So I had 2 English teachers in high school, one in junior high and one in senior high. The one in junior high saw something in me. Like as an adult, you can maybe see this now, but you see a kid that's got potential.
Yeah.
And that like I make a couple decisions, they could go this way. If I make a couple of different decisions, it could go this way.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that that's kind of what he saw in me, was some potential, even though I was an idiot. And so he encouraged me to write. And because of that encouragement, I actually won an award for writing. I wrote a poem that ended up being published in a book.
You have to share that yet.
Okay. Noted. Nobody hold me to that.
Careful what you share, I
But
guess, right?
but I do have that book, and I do have
That's awesome.
it. But just that encouragement, you know, because I always wrote, like, even when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, this is real vulnerable over here. When I was a kid, I always wrote stories and things, because I always thought that was the way that I was going to end up famous. And I never thought I was going to be famous like what fame is now today.
Right.
But like, I always thought I was going to be a great writer, great at something.
Right.
Right. And I always loved writing. And so when he encouraged me in that, I was like, oh, I get to do this.
Right.
Right. I can get to do something like that. And then the second English teacher I had was later, when I was more of an idiot, in senior high. And he just didn't let me quit.
Right.
And that goes a long way. You know? When someone's like, hey, you're an idiot. He never actually said it to me.
Yeah.
But looking back, like, hey, you're an idiot, but just keep working. Just keep doing your thing.
Yeah.
You know? And it was schoolwork. It was schoolwork related stuff, but yeah, it just meant a lot.
Yeah.
When you're a stupid teenage boy and you don't know what's going on in life, to have an adult be like, hey, I know you're an idiot, but keep working hard, it means something.
There is something special about having somebody believe in you, right? So
yeah. So those are my people.
okay.
Those are my people. Are you done grilling me now?
I'm
Getting me all emotional?
You didn't think you would.
I didn't think I would. Perhaps it's the bourbon. Oh, there's my mouse. Okay. So the next question on our list of this, or the next prompt, and I just followed the prompt, guys. In the PDF, there were prompts to kind of get you thinking about these things. And I desperately needed that because I didn't know where to start. So it's okay if you don't either. But what is one day at work that I love so much I would have done for free? And this one was easy for me. I didn't have to think too long and hard about that. I don't know if many guys do, really. But for me, it was when I train people, and this, I've had a couple of opportunities, a couple of businesses to do this in. But when I get to train people on how to be a salesperson, how to do customer service, how to talk to people on the phone, that gets me fired up. When I train them to do good for their company, to do good for themselves, that gets me fired up, and I would do that all day long for free. I just love seeing people get better.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was part of the impetus for us doing this podcast, was I just want to show people that you can get better daily, and it just takes a little bit of action. And so that was what would I do for free? Coach people, train people, help them be better in their craft.
Well, I think is very much up your alley. That's what we met, is just to. That's one of the first things I gathered from you, is that was your passion. So
and it's one of those things where even like when I had my own business for a year and a half, you know, recently, like remembering I also have to make money. You know, Valita, my wife, she would tell me, hey, stop working for free. Because I would get on these calls and I'd want to show so much love and help these people out, and I did. But then that, because I helped them so much, I didn't get to work with them and get paid for it. Yeah. And so that's a detriment, I think, to watch out for. Just because you love something doesn't mean you shouldn't get compensated for it. Yeah. As well. Absolutely. At least if it's business related. Yeah. The next one on the list was, what was my worst day at work? So kind of what was the best and what was the worst of the two questions. And the one that came to mind was, I was in charge of doing some sales work, but then accounting came to me and had me basically forced me to reconcile a bunch of accounting, and I can do it, but I hate paperwork. I hate having to go through numbers. Like, I love profit and loss statements. I love all that kind of stuff in business. But when you're like, hey, can you tell me how much this glass was and why one piece of paper we have says it's $3 and the other piece of paper says it's $5? Like,
Right.
reconciling those things, that was the worst. It took me all day, and I wanted to just jump out a window.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that one as your
Please.
worst day, because I often figure and I often see that the worst day leads you to your best day, right? Like,
Yeah.
your darkest hour will happen, which will lead you
Well,
to your brightest, right? So
I think that day specifically cemented for me what I really enjoy
okay,
and what I really don't.
fair enough.
Right? So for me, it cemented, I like working with people. Right? In that particular spot, I was helping people find loads. I was in logistics, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
Right.
But being in charge of accounting, I really didn't. And so that showed me that although I can do the numbers, it's not my spot.
Right.
Right? There are people that love that spot, and I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of worst days, worst is a big word. It wasn't like the end of the world or anything. It's just not what I wanted to be doing, and I try and stay away from that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Funny enough, what I do for a living now, I do a lot of numbers related things, just in a different capacity.
Right.
So we already talked about the next one. What is the earliest, happiest childhood memory I have that I could think of anyway? I was hanging out with my dad, having a burger at the A&W parking lot, and we already went down that road.
Yeah.
We don't need to do it again. The next one was at school. What was an experience you loved? And this one for me, again, was one where it wasn't very hard to think about. So when I was in 11th grade, we had a skills class that was called, and there was an entrepreneurial week in our school. And so this class, you had to come up with a business. And this is before I realized I love business.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, hadn't figured anything out. And my friend Jess and I, we started a coffee shop, her and I. And it was just like, coffee and latte type things, whatever. And I don't even remember if we made any money, to be honest. But just planning the little bit of marketing for it, setting it all up, getting it going, like, that was the best. And doing it with a great friend, like, she was amazing. So doing that I loved every second of that. Yeah. It's really, really good. That took me down memory lane when I was writing that. I thought a lot about her and the fun we had.
So what about that stood out to you? Like, I mean, like, it's great to do that, but like, what about, like, was it just the business aspect? Was it because it was with a friend? Was it because it challenged you? It opened your eyes to something new realization? Like, what about it stood out to you?
It's a great question. I think, so this is all in hindsight, obviously.
Yeah.
Because at the time it was just something to do with a friend, which I would do again. Jess, if you ever listen to this, love you to death. But I think it was the building of something.
Right.
Right? Like, we came up with the concept, we came up with the name, we came up with what we were going to serve, we set it all up, we built it all, right?
Yeah.
It was basically building a business from the ground up. That was the whole premise of the class. And so just the build, which in hindsight is interesting because that's the part of business I love the most. It's building.
Right.
Helping guys, gals, businesses grow operationally, sales-wise, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The build for me is always the fun part. So, yeah, great question.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that other than the fact that it was with a friend and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next question was, what was a pivotal moment in your life where you knew nothing was going to be the same? I have had. Maybe
besides meeting me.
Yeah, you changed my world, Jeremy. I've had a lot of these. A lot.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm introspective and I think too much sometimes. But I've had a lot of these moments, and the first one I wrote, no surprise to some people, is when I got married.
Right.
Because I take that super seriously, and for me, it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, I'm now responsible for someone other than myself.
Right.
Right? So that was one of those moments where it was like, oh, the world has changed. I'm never going to be the same.
Right.
Right? The next moment that I had is I was part of a business. It was a bad partnership that I didn't know it was bad at the time, obviously, but it was a bad partnership. It ended poorly, but because it ended poorly and all the stuff I went through, it was the best business education I could have ever gotten in a million years. And I wouldn't be sitting here doing this podcast with you right now
Right.
if I hadn't gone through that. I don't wish what happened on my worst enemy, because it was bad, like bad. And maybe sometime in the future we'll talk about that. But I knew in that moment after the fact, like maybe a year later, but I knew because of the education I got from that experience, my life would never be the same. Because I knew things now that I never knew before.
Yeah. So this is kind of where I'm going to go back to where
Please.
that darkest day, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bad work day. So your bad work day may have taken a few weeks or a month or however long
Yep.
to realize, right? But I think that's more of the question that it was asking there. Is maybe not a specific day,
Yeah.
but like this, and maybe
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm thinking this is the situation where, because it was the bad.
Oh, it was
and,
bad.
And I know a little bit about that, not
Yeah.
a lot, but I know that this might be the opportunity where it's like, this was my darkest hour, and this is something that just tore me apart, and it was hard, it was difficult, I felt like it was going to break me, but because of that, it came
Yeah,
out.
and yes. I mean that's a great insight. And the thing is if anyone's ever been through a bad partnership like that in business, and it all unravels and gets messy and things happen, it's not a day, it's not a week,
It's never a day.
it's months, it's years, it's like there's a lot that goes along with that. And so to clean that all up, and I wasn't alone in that. I had a friend and another minority partner in the situation,
Right.
luckily, to go through that with, and I love him to death. He knows who he is if he listens to this. I'll send it to him.
Yeah.
But it was a lot, and it wasn't until it had all cleared that I had realized what I learned, what I got out of it. Because when you go through it, you're just trying to hang on for your dear life and figure it out, you know? And so I was also a lot younger, knew way less, right? So I was just trying to figure it out. And it took a couple of years to get it all cleaned up and put away.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, my friend and I, we still joke about it, sort of in a macabre sort of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of those instances where I knew life was never going to be the same. And then one in hindsight, I didn't even write this down. But one in hindsight is, and I tell this story a couple of other places, so if you've heard it, forgive me, but when I was 19, I worked at McDonald's. Did I tell you this story?
No.
So when I was 19, I worked at McDonald's, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. For the record, I still don't fully know what I want to do with my life. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And everybody else was, going to college and university, and they had a path, and they were doing things. And, one of my good friends was working on becoming a doctor, and all these things. And one day, my manager comes out, and he picks up the trash can in the back, and he starts counting cheese slices. I'm sure there were other things in there, but mentally, what I remember is cheese slices. He's counting them, and he's marking them on a clipboard, just like you're holding your notebook now. He's counting them. And I was like, what are you doing rooting around in the garbage? Like I asked him. And he told me, well, I'm counting waste. I said, counting waste, what do you mean? He goes, well, what happens is we sell burgers and we sell fries and all these things, and we have to count how much we waste because it all has to balance out. And we have to count for it all financially. And in that moment, this light bulb went off. I didn't realize it then. But this light bulb went off. I was like, I love business. I love business. And I went on to do 6 million things.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until later that was the moment. My brain was like, hey, you love business. And I wish I had clued in at 19 that I love business and had started down a path of entrepreneurship at 19. So I'd be in a lot different place now. But yeah, that was one of those moments where again, in hindsight, like I knew my life was never going to be the same in hindsight because of that realization.
Yeah.
So
it was just the cheese slices, him just seeing that
yeah,
everything has to be accounted for, everything has to be known, or
super simple, super
Yeah.
weird, super gross, digging through the garbage. But yeah, that was it. It was just this like, oh, there's simplicity to business,
yeah,
right? Because it's not very hard. You sell some things, you lose some things, and then you account for it at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, and all those pennies on either side add up, and you see how much you made.
right,
Profit and loss, right?
yep,
Obviously, in 19, I didn't know those things. But that was a profound moment.
it's really interesting.
What happened that changed the way you look at the world? This one I had to think of. Because there's been a lot of different things, and some of them, I'll probably never talk about publicly. But the one that came to mind was about 2.5 years ago. I met this girl named Amanda. Woman, I should say. She's not a girl. Woman named Amanda. A friend of mine lives in Florida. She's amazing. And she showed me what was possible when you accepted help and actually believed in yourself. So she believed in me first.
Right.
I borrowed her belief in me, which then grew my confidence. And because of her, I was able to go on and for 1.5 years have my own business and do different things. But I look at the world differently now because of that interaction, because of that friendship. Because she was like, the very first time we met, we're on Zoom because she's in Florida. We're on Zoom. She looks at me dead in the camera and she says, "Stop being so effing nice." Never forget it.
Yeah.
We hardly know each other from Adam at this point.
Right.
We haven't built the friendship we have now. And I'm like, sorry? What do you mean? I'm a nice guy. She goes, "Stop being so effing nice." And she wanted to explain to me that there's a difference between being nice and being being taken advantage of. And you and I were kind of talking about that briefly before the podcast about the situation you had.
Right.
But that's kind of the idea, is knowing when nice is too nice. And that was the moment that I started looking at the world completely different from that aspect. Again, there are other things at play that we could talk about, but
Yeah. Well, you know what, I find it so interesting, like, that we're talking about this, because, I mean, along those lines, like, I've been told that before too, like those kind of things, like,
yeah.
and I think this is why we're good at this, is have those conversations, is because, like, man, like, I always thought this was supposed to be, we were supposed to, right? Like,
Yeah.
And, well, wait a second.
That narrative of this is how you're supposed to be.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I can relate to what you're saying there, and the meaningful of being nice is great, but so what about, like, this interaction, like, so it changed your world, so what about that change, like, and what change did that bring? Because, I mean, it's nice to say, oh, that might have been a monumental thing and it might affect you, but what change did it bring? Because
What changed it?
yeah, well, because it's what changed your world, right? Or
Yeah,
is that the way it is?
That is exactly the way it is.
Okay, so what about, like, that experience happened, that was eye-opening, so what changed?
It changed the lens, because this is about how I look at the world, right?
Right.
It changed the lens through which I view myself.
Okay.
So I'm in my mid-30s. You would think that at that point in your life, you are who you are,
Right.
right? Like, you're set in who you are. Doesn't mean you're confident. Doesn't mean you're confident in who you are.
Yeah.
And so up to that point, that was a couple years ago now, 2.5 years ago, I wasn't confident in who I was. I didn't believe in myself. I believed that success was for Jeremy. I believed that great things were for Jeremy, but not for me. And so being friends with Amanda, she's like, lovingly, she basically was like, you're an idiot. You have so much potential. You have so many things to talk about. What's the matter with you?
Right.
And she was a hard ass on me, still is to this day, and I love her for it. She's gonna run the world one day, but
She has quite a story in herself.
you know, like
I followed her a little bit.
Okay.
I follow her on Instagram, so I
Okay.
know who she is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know her, but
Yeah.
I know who she is, right? So
yeah, you don't know the half of it.
no, like
But,
I've seen a few things, but that's probably very minimal.
But yeah, because of that, I gained the confidence in myself. Because I gained the confidence in myself, I was able to do my own thing. Yes, it didn't work out the first time around. Doesn't mean there won't be another. Doesn't mean I won't go on to help grow the company I'm at with now, etc., etc. But it gave me the confidence to do those things. It showed me what was possible.
Right.
They talk about surrounding yourself with people that push you.
Yeah.
She didn't just push me. She kicked me in the ass. Plain and simple.
Right.
And pardon my language if that offends you, but that's what she did. And sometimes we need that.
Yeah.
And that's what changed my worldview. Was I changed.
So what part of you changed then? Like I'm going to drill a little bit
Yeah.
more because
Yeah.
it's inspiring.
So-
but
Yeah.
let's get back to what part of it changed you.
What part of it changed me was I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe good things were for me.
Right.
And when you believe that about yourself, when you believe that good things aren't for you, good things won't happen for you.
Right.
Like, they just can't. Because your brain, however you believe about this, your brain naturally will go away from the good.
Yeah.
Because you believe that belief is so wired inside of you that it's not for you, it's for somebody else.
Right.
That you can't accept it. And so when Amanda helped rewire me, I was able to start viewing the world from a I deserve perspective. Right? And not from a I deserve it without the work. But if I put the work in, I deserve it.
Right.
And so I deserve to get paid for my worth. Stop working for free. I deserve to have good friends around me. I deserve to have good things in life.
Right.
I started viewing the world from, if I put the work in, I deserve it. And using that word deserve makes me sound a little bit selfish perhaps, but you have to be a little bit selfish, I think, if you're trying to build something in your life.
Yeah.
Whether it's better routines, whether it's a business, whether it's a career, whether it's friendships, you have to be selfish about who you spend time with and how you spend the time. And I know we're kind of on a rabbit trail, but when you don't believe you deserve things because you put the work in, you're never going to really put the work in, right? Like, if I believed that I didn't have anything to offer the world, why would I put the work in to sit here on a Friday night and do this podcast? We could soon as just meet
Exactly.
and do something else, right? If I didn't believe that I had skills to offer my employer, why would I show up every day and put my all in? Put up with the crazy.
Yeah.
Right? I do it because I know I add value. I add tremendous value. And
There
I
we
get
go.
paid
Yeah.
for it. Right? Although, if my boss is listening, I should get paid more. But
okay, so
yeah,
I was kind of digging. I was hoping to get to that, like that add value part, because I think that's what I kind of figured that's the direction you kind of felt, right?
Yeah.
So I was like
yes.
pushing to see if, like, will you, like, is that
true?
am I just
No,
assuming, or is
that's
that
exactly. That's exactly.
and so that's kind of something I know from you, and so I wanted to see if knowing your self-worth, but like your self-worth often comes with.
Thank you. So self-worth is a great. I wasn't thinking about that, but well, I was, but not that word. I've always added value. I've always worked hard. I mean, the stories we were talking about before, Like the work ethic that was instilled in me. I've always worked hard.
Yeah.
Always. But when you don't believe you add value or you have value, you think that it doesn't matter. The minute that you believe your hard work matters, the world changes. How you view the world changes.
Absolutely.
That's it.
All right, now this ties right into the last one there.
When did I serve someone?
Yeah. So this one I know you could probably have a book on, but let's see where we go.
Yes. So, and I did everything important for him here. So when Jerry digs in, he's digging in. Like there's nothing written on the screen more than a couple of lines. But
and to be honest, I haven't really looked at
No.
I looked at the headlines and that's it.
That was on purpose.
Yeah.
That was I did this on purpose.
And I have something blocking it, so I can't really read it. I just see certain words.
So when did I serve someone and really just served? And so what I wrote down was, there's been a couple of times when I've been training someone on how to do sales.
Yeah.
How to talk on the phone to people. But what ends up happening is I realized that their block on making more sales or being good on the phone has nothing to do with their ability. It's their lack of self-worth, their lack of confidence in themselves. And so being able to spend some time training them and see their confidence grow is everything. I'm thinking about one instance. There's a couple that come to mind, but one instance in particular, I don't know how it turned out for him because he left the company I was doing work for.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where he is or what he's doing. But we started doing some sales training together. And I was training him on how to be on the phone and how to make calls. And it became very apparent to me very early in our first conversation. He's not very good on the phone because he doesn't believe in himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you recognize those things because you've been there, you are there.
Absolutely.
Like you see a little bit of yourself in there. And so over the next several weeks that I worked up with him on sales training, I'd always take 10 or 15 minutes and we'd work on his confidence. And seeing his confidence grow was way better than the training I was doing.
Yeah.
And seeing him kind of come out of his shell a little bit and be better on the phone was so good. And I wish he had stuck around at the company I was doing work for so I could see, the end result if we had continued to work together.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he left and went on to do something else. So I don't know where he is or what he's doing, but seeing people who aren't confident in themselves because they struggle with things and then help them build into this amazing human is my favorite. Because, I'm thinking about my good friend who I trained on how to do sales. He became a beast of a salesperson. Way better than I am.
Right.
Way better than I am. And all it took was for me to train him so he could see his confidence grow. Once his confidence grew, he was unstoppable.
So what made you most proud of that moment? Is it, sorry, I won't even fill it in. What made you most proud of that moment? I'm not going to give you options. You figure it out.
Building the confidence in someone.
Yeah.
Showing them that they've got what it takes. Because once you show someone they've got what it takes, it's it.
Yeah.
They can take over the world. They can do anything. Like my friend who I'm thinking of, who I train in sales, not only became a beast of a salesperson, he's now finance manager at a large dealership doing big things.
Right.
Because he has the confidence. And I love it. I love that he's doing big things.
Yeah.
He deserves it. He deserves bigger. And it all started because I gave him the confidence, or I helped him. I didn't give him the confidence. I helped show him what he had inside of him.
Yeah.
And it unleashed something that has been unstoppable.
Well, that's really interesting. And I think that's the last of our questions that we actually have up there right now. Ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's
All
go.
right. So one of the biggest themes I really found passionate about was family. I'll go through the words that I wrote down, right?
Please.
So family, responsibility, hard work, right? Those were my top three that we just hit right off the bat, because they there's something that obviously they meant something to you when you were young, and they mean something to you now, and they may like, and just having a conversation with you, you can see those three things are meaningful to you, right?
Very much.
Then you also mentioned study, learning, and writing. We briefly touched on those, but we kind of like, I know those are also important, but
Yeah. Secondary.
secondary, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of skimmed past a little bit of that. Time was something that we talked about. Is not just
Interesting.
time, but in the general sense of, oh, well, we got, what do we do with our time? It's being purposeful, right? And so the time really drove, as you continue talking, I realized it's less about the time, it's more about what you're doing with it, and the purposeful, right? And then next thing what I have on the list is believing in something, is having a purpose. It comes right back down to purposeful, right? Love seeing people get better is something that is something that you really mentioned a few times. Building something, adding value, and then belief in self and something that matters, right? So I know I'm raging through this pretty quick, right? So when I was looking at this, and while you were talking,
Yeah.
three things or a few things that really stood out to me. That's purposeful was probably the biggest thing, right? So, and then training, and I guess I wrote down being part of something, but then I wrote down other stuff here, but being a part of something, adding value, and seeing people get better, right? Those were kind of the three. They're the big areas that really stood out to me.
Yeah. No, I think that's good, and I think that for anybody that knows me, and as I've gotten to know myself, like those are 100% on point. Like
Yeah.
I love nothing more than and I think that came out in the last episode, towards the end, as I got emotional about one of my friends, but that for me, seeing people get better, seeing people win, is everything to me. And what I've learned, so before I believed that others deserve to win, I didn't. But now what I believe is if I help you win, I'll win.
Yeah.
And I think in Zig Ziglar talks about this idea that if you help others get what they want, you'll get what you want.
Yep.
And that's what I believe now more than ever, is if I help other people win eventually, I'm going to win.
So then that leads me to kind of my final statement that I
All right.
with. And I should read, what is it?
Yeah. So draft your why. So I'm reading verbatim from the document here, guys. Once you've identified your overreaching themes, which I think we've nailed pretty good, you did a good job. I'll give you a golf clap later. It's time to draft them into your why statement. So as you draft them into your why statement, to blank contribution, so that blank impact. And you may not have it written down that way, but that's the next step in the why formula, if we're calling it a formula.
Okay, so I kind of have the first part of it.
Okay.
To build self-worth in others. And then what is it? So that they can make a difference, so that they can achieve their goal. I don't think there's, I'll let you fill that last part, but definitely I think that to build self-worth in others is something that you really talked about. I think you find a lot of purpose in that, just through our whole conversation, through what you've talked about, whether it's with family, whether it's with other business people, whether it's with that guy you got emotional about at the end, but because it's also what you experienced with Amanda, is when you found out that self-worth aspect of it, like that's just
so important.
That hit, right? And so you're like, this is my purpose, this is what this is that resonated with you, because you felt like that. Maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but that felt like, it seemed like you felt like that hit, and like, oh, like that self-worth, man, if anybody could feel the way I feel right now because I have that self-worth, like that's where my trigger, that's where I'm going to dive in, that's where I feel passionate, that's where I feel
100%, and that's 100% right. And so what I wrote down was to build self-worth in others so that they can win in life. And,
There you go.
And plain and simple, guys, like for you, it's going to be different. And I hope that you do go through this exercise. I hope that you do spend time here, even if, you know, it's halfway. Spend some time thinking about some of these things we've gone through in the past episode, because it really makes you think about what's important, about what matters to you, right? Like Jeremy coming here and telling me that I really felt something about building my own self-worth, and that's all along what I've wanted to do for others, even before I knew that that was a thing.
Yeah.
Because even before I met Amanda, and she basically kicked my butt, realizing that I have self-worth, true self-worth.
Yeah. What
really matters to me has always been helping others and seeing them win. Like even on a weird example, but where I work now, I simply want my owner to get better. I want his business to grow. And if I can be a small part of that, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, doing for others what Amanda did for me, you're right, 100%. Whether that's an individual or a business, as I drop things. That's what really matters to me. And so I hope that this podcast can be a small piece of that. Moving forward, I hope that one day I get to do it for a living forever, because I love helping people and businesses win. That's it. Call to action is going to be, guys,
Do your why.
do your why exercise.
Yeah.
Just do it. Do it by yourself. Do it with a friend. Don't do it with your partner. You know, your husband, wife, whoever's listening. Hopefully it's Bishop Ben listening, because that's who my demographic is, who our demographic is. So men, don't do it with your wives, but to do it with a friend. If you don't want to do it with a friend because you're kind of embarrassed, that's okay. Do it with yourself. If you're not even sure, reach out. One of us will do it with you.
Sure.
Digitally, no problem. But do it.
Yeah.
I encourage you to do it. See what ends up. See what you find out about yourself. You're going to learn a lot, I promise. And that's it from Jeremy and I. See you later.